very welcome back to Flop Culture. My name is Fanula. I hope you're well. This is a podcast where we talk mainly about flops, and I also bring you up to speed on everything that's happened in pop culture this week, that week, all the weeks. So happy to have you here. Please follow the show on social media. We're on Instagram and we're on TikTok. We're not on one platform, which will be explained later. It's flopculture_pod if you want to follow us there. Please do rate and review the show wherever you're listening. If you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with your nickname, I will recommend a bop or flop to you, personalised, at the end of next week's episode. So do get them in, and it helps people find the show as well. If you want more content, patreon.com/flopculture. That's where you need to go. One episode I'd like to shout out, given there's a lot of celebration around this particular flop at the minute. There was a lost episode of Flop Culture that was actually meant to be a main episode, but technology snafus, all that jazz. It didn't happen, but it now lives on Patreon, and it's all about Crossroads, the Britney Spears classic. And I was very excited to be joined by Claire from Celebrity Memoir Book Club for that one, Claire Parker. So if you want to go listen to that, it's on the Patreon, patreon.com/flopculture. Myself and Owen Keane, the gorgeous Owen Keane, we're going to be digging into Fleabag season 2 very soon as well. If you want to join us over there, please do. We'd love to have you. Now, let's get into the news. I swear to God, this isn't going to become a Taylor Swift podcast, right? And whatever my biases and all that jazz, but she's just, the girl makes news, right? She is responsible for the news industry. You know what I mean? Her and maybe Travis Kelce this week, rumoured new boyfriend. Who is Travis Kelce? How did this all begin? Well, we have to go back to the beginning for that, don't we? Taylor Swift, previously in a relationship with the actor Joe Alwyn. They broke up in April of this year. They were going out for 6 years. A lot of fans thought they were endgame, no pun intended, but then they broke up. In between that, Taylor dated Maddie Healy, which we do not talk about for obvious reasons. And she was, she's been seen out having fun. And we mentioned last week she was out with Sophie Turner in the wake of Sophie Turner's divorce from Joe Jonas. Now, seemingly, my favourite word in journalism and media, Taylor is spending a lot of time with Travis Kelce, who's an American footballer. He plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. I asked my NFL friends, shout out Sham. I asked Sham. Sham said he's very good. Probably the best in the game at the minute. He said he could go more granular on it. I said, respectfully, I don't care. Is he good? And Sham said yes. So there you go. And they're spending a lot of time together. For anyone who's not very familiar with Travis Kelce, 33, also born in 1989. That's significant because Taylor Swift is obsessed with numerology for some reason. He was previously dating a sports journalist called Kayla Nicole. They were going out for a very long time, but they broke up towards the end of last year. Prior to that, he had a reality show in 2016 called Catching Kelce, which revolved around him finding a girlfriend. I think he was dating like 50 people at the one time. Good if you can get it, girls, am I right? Anyway, whoever won that, he ended up dating for a few months, but, didn't work out. He has basically been actively pursuing Taylor publicly since July. I know people have dug up like other interviews in which he played a game of like marry, kiss, kill in the States with some publication around the time that he was promoting this dating show, in which he was asked, kiss, marry, kill, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, Ariana Grande, and significantly he said Taylor Swift. I actually just think, I don't think there's anything in that. I don't think he was manifesting it at that point, right? But definitely since July, when he went to the Eras tour himself at Arrowhead Stadium, which is where that's his team stadium, their home turf. He went to see her and he talked about the experience on the podcast he does with his brother, Jason Kelce. And he explained the whole phenomenon around friendship bracelets at Taylor Swift concerts, that fans exchanged them, whatever else. And he, and I quote, said, I received a bunch of them being there, but I wanted to give Taylor Swift one with my number on it. And his brother asked, your number as in 87, as in the number he plays with, or your phone number? You know which one, Kelce joked back. So he basically said he was kind of butthurt that he didn't get to speak to her, but like obviously that she probably saves her voice because the show is so long, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Been kind of dropping loads of hints ever since that in other interviews. And then he was asked about it directly on the Pat McAfee show about the headlines and about headlines around his personal life and whether it bothered him. And he came back and said, I threw the ball in her court, her being Taylor Swift. I told her, I've seen you rock a stage in Arrowhead and you might have to come see me rock the stage at Arrowhead. We'll see what happens in the near future. So kind of, this is all happening. And I'm like, okay, this man is like really actively thirsty. This is never going to go anywhere. But like, God loves a trier, yada, yada, yada. Bigger fool me, because next thing you know, Taylor Swift is sitting next to his mom at Arrowhead Stadium this week as they were playing the Chicago Bears. This is also significant because Taylor Swift has come out vocally talking about another team before, like owns a jersey. I can't remember the name of the team. I'll get it in a second. But yeah, she's sitting there with his mom, shouting, screaming, roaring, having a vodka cran, having some chicken fingers, potentially having some ranch. People don't know whether it's ranch or mayonnaise. It's all go. They're spotted walking out together. Yeah. So are they together? Who knows? Is it PR? Who knows? I think it's a bit of both. I think in the same way kind of with Maddie Healy, and I just don't think she anticipated the backlash and then was like, oh, actually, maybe not. Sorry, the team that Taylor is the jersey for is the Eagles. As far as I'm aware. I don't know where they're from. Not the Sky, presumably, or Nest's football team, whatever. Anyway, the Taylor Swift effect in full force here, even if they're not going out, herself and Travis. Sales for his jersey have gone up by almost 400%. Nutso, absolutely nutso. And Travis himself, on Instagram, he has gained over 300,000 followers. And that was in like just the 24 hours after she was seen at the game. So it's probably even more since. Nuts. Now, I'm pretty sure he has a podcast coming out this week with his brother, a new episode, and it seems like they're going to talk about it. I don't know if they're doing that thing on social media where they're just hinting they're going to talk about it so that people listen. If it's going to be a whole, we're just friends, she came, we had a laugh, whatever, all in good fun, all in good jest. To be honest, I'll be actively annoyed about that. As much as I don't want him going on, given all the dirty, juicy details, be a respectful date in that sense. I don't need to know everything. I'm also like, do not come on here and say we're just friends after all that. You know what I mean? Take it home, Travis. Take it home. She needs to be in her hot sports star era, as far as I'm concerned as well. No more Brits either, We know how I feel about that, right? Separately as well. And I suppose also why people maybe think this is PR. Taylor has just announced that she's bringing the Eras Tour to cinemas worldwide, which includes Ireland. From October 13th, you can see the Eras Tour in the cinema. I got 2 tickets. They set me back. Now, I got IMAX tickets. They sent me back 49 good Irish euros. And that's before a minstrel has even passed my juicy lips. Sick. But I don't have tickets for the concert, so that's what I'm going with. You know what I mean? If I can't go, at least I'm going to see it in cinema with a big fat box of popcorn. Can't wait. Let me know. Did you get tickets? What do you think about this relationship? Please. I need to know. It's taking over so much of my brain space. The writer strike is ending. Thanks be to God. Screenwriters in the US have reached a deal with studio bosses that has ended the strike that has lasted nearly 5 months, the longest strike in recent history. They were striking in a row over pay and the use of artificial intelligence in the industry, as we all know. And it's the longest strike to affect Hollywood in decades, as I said, and halted lots of film and TV productions, including Stranger Things, The Last of Us, many, many more. Stranger Things writers announced this week that they have gone back to writing the show, which is very exciting. But I do wonder, because the actor strike is ongoing, and look, I think the positive assumption would be that the actors will follow suit, but we don't know that, and we can't guarantee that. There's no guarantee that they're going to go back, which means like by the time Stranger Things comes back for the 5th and final season, the children are going to be 47 years old. You know what I mean? They're not going to be children at all. There's not even a joke about them being made to be in college. Like they're going to be in their mid-30s and disillusioned and ringing people about pensions. You know what I mean? And is that the scariest thing of all, girls? Is that scarier than the upside down? Potentially. But delighted for the writers. Delighted they struck out and they're getting paid what they deserve, because I'm so glad for television and I'm so glad for really good television, and it's what they deserve. Anyway, from a bop, the strike ending, to this week's flop. Let's get into it. X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, was once the go-to platform for real-time updates and breaking news. and its unique charm made it indispensable for millions as it became a place where communities could flourish. But over the years, we saw a shift in user behaviour and a growing disillusionment with the platform. Twitter began facing challenges in combating harassment, hate speech, the spread of fake news, the struggle to monetize the platform. And that was even before the significant CEO change. Joining me to discuss and explain Twitter's flop era is tech journalist and author of the book Extremely Online, The Untold Story of Fame, Influence and Power, is tech journalist Taylor Lorenz. Taylor Lorenz, it is an honour to have you on Flop Culture. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
I am a huge fan of your work. I can't remember the first thing that I read of yours, to be honest, but I always remember, my background is previously in journalism. I'm not in journalism anymore, but I remember reading your stuff around creators and especially in the early iterations of TikTok and just being fascinated with you and hugely appreciative of you for taking those beats very seriously and being interested in the same things that I was interested in and writing about them properly and giving them the time they deserved. So as I said, it is a huge honour to have you here and have you on for this season. For anyone who's maybe not super familiar with you and your work, could you give them a little bit of background as to what you cover? Because it's very interesting. I think Flop Culture listeners will be similarly interested in what you do.
Yeah, I cover the content creator industry and I cover just online culture generally. I cover tech from the user side. So it's less about like covering kind of like who's the next Facebook CEO and more like how do people use, these platforms and obviously the influencers that, manipulate them and grow audiences on them and all this sort of like craziness of the internet, like meme culture, sometimes gaming, all that stuff.
What brought you into that space? Were you just interested or was there like another reason? Were you seeing this crazy growth in certain platforms in certain areas and you were like, I need me a bit of this. I need to figure out what the hell is going on here.
Yeah, well, I started on Tumblr. If people remember that, it's been a while now. I was talking to some young person the other day that was like, oh, Tumblr, that was back in the day. It's still around.
That's
I know,
depressing.
I felt like a boomer. Yeah. I started in 2009 as a blogger on Tumblr and kind of, leaned very heavily into blogging and then wrote for a lot of digital media sites. And then kind of, started writing for more and more legacy publications and eventually found my way to the New York Times. And then I left the New York Times after a few years to come to the Washington Post about a year ago.
Love it. I'm just obsessed. You're here to plug a book, which I'm very excited about, and we'll talk about a little bit more at the end. But obviously with Flop Culture, each episode is usually about a specific flop. And usually I let my guests pick, but given your background and everything that's been going on in the last even 6 months, 3 months, 1 month, I figured there's kind of no bigger social media flop at the minute than Twitter. X, don't recognise X, whatever, we'll get into that. How, I suppose, did Twitter start as a platform and a microblogging platform? And what are your earliest memories of it?
Yeah, I actually write in my book all about Twitter's beginnings and sort of the earliest era of usage. It started as this you mentioned microblogging, this sort of way to post like short status messages. It actually started as a text platform, like on your phone, you would text and it was sort of, it was this like way to kind of like give short updates about your life or where you are. People used it a lot in early South by Southwest days to be like, hey, I'm going to the barbecue here or whatever. And then it sort of moved into this platform where people started to share news and information and have these like sort of distinct personalities online. And that was kind of more around 2010 after Facebook rolled out Newsfeed to kind of compete with Twitter. You just saw more and more people kind of sharing for the internet and for public consumption. And I write in my book about a lot of the early like Twitter parody accounts. I don't know if you remember, there was this whole era in like the early 2010s where like there was like a one called like Bronx Zoo Cobra or something. It was this like cobra that had escaped the Bronx Zoo. Someone made a Twitter account. It would get like 30,000 followers. But it was this really, transformative platform because it was the first text-based social platform. It was like not that wasn't a blog. Like there was obviously Tumblr. It was kind of had some social functionality, but it was primarily a blogging platform. And same with other blogging platforms before it. Twitter was this like way to kind of essentially blog like on the go in these short 140 character messages.
What can you tell us about the founder, Jack Dorsey, then? Like, what was his vision for Twitter? How did he come? I mean, do we have all night? We don't. But, I mean, what was his vision for the platform? And, yeah, I mean, kind of stumbled upon a gold mine in some ways. And then in others, I mean, just beyond.
Yeah, I talk about this in my book, but I mean, none of these Silicon Valley tech CEOs had any idea what they were doing or what they would ultimately build. And, you know, Jack's goal was not to build like the next giant like social network news platform. Like no one was even really thinking of that at the time. I think it started as a podcasting company called Odeo, and then pivoted to Twitter. It was very haphazard. The early founders of Twitter, there's a great book actually by the journalist Nick Bilton called Hatching Twitter that gets into sort of this whole early era of like the founders and just how like kind of bumbling they were. But Jack sort of eventually decided that he had this vision for it to be this like kind of, you know, space for everybody to share kind of thoughts. There was a lot of optimism in the early Twitter days. You have to remember this was the time of like the Arab Spring. Remember that? And like everyone thought like, oh, Twitter is going to be this force for democracy in the world and citizen journalism. And, you know, news organizations embraced it so hard. And obviously we see how that shaped out. It did the exact opposite.
It's nuts. Like to even see where it is now, it's laughable, but it's not even remotely funny. Are there any moments that stick out to you when you think of the social juggernaut that Twitter was? I know you mentioned some parody accounts there, but are there any kind of pivotal axis moments where you were like, oh yeah, this is huge, like this is a thing, this is impacting news, this is impacting celebrity, this is impacting society? What are those moments for you?
So in 2009, this plane, I think it was Sully Sulzberger or whatever, it was the pilot, they eventually made a movie out of all this, landed this plane on the Hudson River and people had to, you know, escape. And it was such a moment for Twitter because actually that news broke on Twitter first. And that was the first time where I think it was somebody on the wing of the plane or one of the rescuers actually tweeted updates. And again, that sort of real-time access to news information was a totally new thing. Like before that, you'd have to wait for like CNN.com to like update their homepage. You know, there was no kind of organic discovery of news content. So it was really transformative and really kind of opened people's eyes to kind of what Twitter could be. Another big moment was in April 2013 with the Boston bombing, when there was, again, this real-time coverage of this news event. Between Twitter and Reddit, there was actually tons of misinformation spreading. You know, it was a lot of people sort of searching for the perpetrator and misidentifying the perpetrator. And a lot of people tweeting out basically live updates from police scanners, which are also notoriously unreliable. And I skipped over one too in 2012 was Hurricane Sandy. So it was like and it's funny that all these, I mean, they all happened on the East Coast, actually. It's just like I guess two of them happened in New York, but these were all really formative events for early Twitter because it showed the power of the platform as a news platform, as a real-time information platform, and as a social platform where people were like, you know, they were sort of like bonding over these events and talking and discussing things, right? Like, and I think, just really, I mean, that just kicked off like Twitter's success. And shortly after that, you know, Twitter actually acquired Vine, which was incredibly prescient of them. And I think had they not mismanaged that app into the ground, would have really been transformative. Unfortunately, in classic Twitter fashion, they destroyed and shut down the app. But yeah.
R.I.P. Vine. What could have been. It's kind of, obviously I know this episode is about Twitter, but like it's insane to think of the lasting impact that Vine has, even how it exists still in, you know, the compilation videos on YouTube, and then they've migrated to like TikTok, and they still, like, you'll get them on Instagram Reels occasionally. It's just, who would have ever thought, you know? Who would have ever thunk it? I'm very excited to read about that in your book as a past Vine lover and a still Vine lover.
There's so much stuff about Vine in my book, so much unreported stuff about Vine. So I think people will find it interesting.
Oh, Taylor, you tease. I'm already excited. You don't need to get me any more excited, but I'm sure the listeners now, smack that pre-order button, please. Please, God. In terms of, I suppose, celebrities and kind of early adopters of Twitter, because we've seen it even with TikTok being kind of new kid on the block social network, and how much kind of the early adopters, like we'll say, like Charlie Puth's an example, there's loads of others, like how much they've benefited from being kind of early on the platform and using the platform and using it well. Who are the names that kind of stand out for you when it comes to those early, like, seminal days of Twitter?
Well, I write about this in the book too, but there was this famous race between Ashton Kutcher and CNN to 1 million followers. It was who is going to be the first Twitter user with 1 million followers.
I remember this.
2009. Remember that?
Yes. Oh my God. Moment.
Yeah. And Ashton Kutcher won, which actually is very funny because that kind of foreshadowed, I think, a lot of the future of Twitter, which is this focus on individuals and not brands. But yeah, they were racing to 1 million followers. Ashton Kutcher, of course, he's always sort of adapting tech platforms early. But in addition to him, you had so many celebrities, and it's hard to remember. But before celebrities all went to Instagram, and Sarah Fryer's book "No Filter," which I have behind me, is a great book on Instagram that talks about this, what happened. But they were all on Twitter. They were all using Twitter, and every major celebrity under the sun: Jessica Alba, Mariah Carey, like Paris Hilton, like they're all Lindsay Lohan. These were all Twitter users. And then once the Instagram was able to capture them eventually, and they all sort of, now at this point, I wrote a piece last year, celebrities are all off Twitter pretty much. But Chrissy Teigen, famous Twitter user. Indeed.
When was that specific turning point then? And in turn, like where did the Venn diagrams like intersect in terms of Elon Musk looming like a horrible shadow and then just becoming the Venn diagram intersecting, you know what I mean? Like what? What happened, Taylor? It used to be good and now it's so bad. What happened?
Well, I know. It had, Twitter had this thing where like, so by the mid 2015, like by 2015-ish, like by the mid 2010s, Instagram had stolen pretty much all the big celebrities because celebrities realized it's actually much better to just post a picture and you don't have to worry about saying anything or having your words, quoted anywhere. You can just sort of post a picture. So Instagram was really successful in attracting the famous people and celebrities away from Twitter. Twitter got very political and also became a really, again, like this big place for journalism and news media. I think in 2016, that election was a crazy election. But it was very much like a Twitter election. And I think when Trump took hold, there was this reckoning. And I write about this in my book as well in 2017 across all the social platforms, but especially Twitter and YouTube. But Twitter, people started to look at the rise of extremism on Twitter and be like, okay, wait, we have a problem. Obviously, Gamergate had happened, which was this online harassment movement against women in the gaming ecosystem earlier in 2014. But it was still sort of like this niche, like there was online harassment, but it was not like as pervasive on the platform in 2014, 2015, even into 2016. With the Donald Trump's election, there was this reckoning where people were like, oh shit, social platforms can actually be used for really bad things. And maybe there's a lot of extremism that is being ushered in. I mean, you have to remember, they didn't even ban Alex Jones until 2018 or 2019 from Twitter.
Which, I mean,
they had all these people. I mean, Milo Yiannopoulos, Mike Cernovich. Twitter facilitated the rise of so many far-right content creators and influencers that we're still stuck with today because Twitter allowed them to amass these massive audiences, which they then boosted their YouTube channels with, and it's horrible. So that was sort of like when, I would say 2017 is like when like the cracks started to show. Also, Twitter was like sort of famously not profitable. They were forced to shut down Vine because they couldn't manage it, and they had alienated all the big creators. So like they didn't really have a good product strategy. Like they weren't evolving into video like the rest of the internet. And it was on life support. Obviously they had Dick Costello, I don't know how you say his last name, the CEO that kind of came in, and then before it went back to Jack. And Jack, Jack's just not a good, he sort of has his own weird ideologies, and I think he was just not a great business manager for Twitter. So I would say when Elon came in, Twitter was very much on life support. Like it was already on life support. And when Elon took over, I actually think there was a lot of optimism. Like people were like, look, Elon's a little bit brain poisoned, but
Elon's a little bit cookie crazy, but who knows?
But we'll see what it could happen. Like, maybe it'll be good. Like, I mean, the thing is that Twitter was sort of atrophying, and it would have had this very slow death had Elon not taken over. It was not like Twitter was on a good path. It was sort of already sick and dying. And then Elon took over, and it was like just like pouring poison. Like, it's like he lit the entire thing on fire. He took over last fall and immediately started banning people such as myself, journalists that he disagreed with. Elon is sort of like the most anti-free speech tech CEO that we have today. He is just, it's crazy. I mean, he just started rolling back all this stuff. He brought back, countless accounts that were previously banned for harassment and abuse, and it's gotten really bad. But yeah.
What's the experience been like for staff there, the staff that are left at Twitter? And obviously there was these mass layoffs as well initially. Like, it must have been a very challenging environment, and probably still continues to be. As you said, Elon is continuously bringing in these people that were actively harassing people, taking away features that like aren't just there for fun. Like, the block feature is there for a purpose. It's there to prevent harassment. It's there to protect users. Like, that must be so hard for anyone working there.
There's not many people that work there by choice at this point. I mean, most people, a lot of people there are stuck on visas, or they have family circumstances where everyone's trying to get out. And the very few people that I know that are still at Twitter are all trying to get out. It's a hellscape. Elon doesn't know what he's doing. He just sort of it's like very Donald Trump in the sense that like he sort of makes decisions based off just whatever the last person told him who walked out of the room. Like, there's no strategy. Elon himself has zero understanding of social products. Zero. Like, he doesn't understand the value of content creators for his platform. So he sort of has like kicked off every major reliable news organization and influential person. And now he's just got, he's sort of facilitating the rise of this whole new class of far-right extremists.
Is this the first example of, because I know he's talked about like bringing it, or like maybe potentially is, I'm going to be honest, I've had to tune out of a lot of the headlines surrounding Twitter and X and Elon, because I'm just like, this is beyond grim, whatever. But is this the first example of someone trying to bring in like generative AI in favour of like an actual active workforce? Because I know that's something he's always been on about, but I don't know if it's something he's put into practice. Is that the case? Or
no, he hasn't done any of that. What he's done is just like cut costs. So he's just fired everyone, and sort of like, that's why the app is breaking. There's really lax security. He's cut off all the APIs. Like, it's just sort of just like a broken down house that's in like slow disarray. But he hasn't really successfully automated anything, because you can't automate product development. Like, you need product people, you need engineers, you need designers, and he's fired everyone.
Let's talk X. Let's talk about the X in the room, shall we? I mean, what's the backstory behind X? Like, why?
Oh my God, it's so funny. Well, let me tell you something. Elon Musk got ousted from PayPal in part because he kept trying to rename the company X. So Elon Musk's company was acquired. He had a payments company that was acquired by PayPal. So Elon Musk is involved in PayPal now. And literally, they pushed him out of the company in part because he was going around everyone's back trying to rename the company X. He has been, for whatever reason, it's like a 13-year-old boy, just obsessed with the name X for so long. And it's a terrible name. It's something that you can barely pronounce in certain languages. Like, it's bizarre. And, he's always sort of talked about this vision for sort of like an everything app. Like, he wants it to be kind of, is it WeChat? What's the main big social Chinese? Weibo?
It is WeChat, isn't it?
WeChat, yeah. He wants it to be this like everything app where basically it's like payments. You can order an Uber. You can get food. You can also, you can do everything at once in this app. Nobody wants that. Nobody's ever asked for that. Our tech landscape is so different than China's tech landscape that it's like, it makes no sense. And yeah, he has a delusion that I guess he's going to do this with Twitter, but he's not really going to do that. Twitter, I think, is an ideological project for him as much as a tech business project.
With that in mind, then, what does the future hold for Twitter/X, can you see it weathering this storm, or is it dead as a dodo?
No, I think Twitter is pretty dead. I don't see it coming back even remotely to its relevance, because I don't think Elon wants it to be. The things that he would have to do to make it a mainstream social platform, he doesn't want to do, because he himself has gotten completely Twitter brained. Like he got so much money so quickly. I think he has very bad judgment, and he can't see past himself. Like I don't think he would be able to ever transform it into anything like Facebook or TikTok or anything like that. Could
you see any of its clones taking over in terms of popularity? You're seeing a lot of people migrate to like Mastodon and like Blue Sky and stuff like that. But is it, to quote JoJo, too little too late? Have we all moved on collectively?
Yeah, I think we have moved on. I don't think that there will be a one-to-one replacement of Twitter. I think, sure, there'll be a community on Blue Sky, there'll be a community on Threads, there'll be a community on, Mastodon for tech people, but there's never going to be a one-to-one Twitter replacement. Unless Threads succeeds. But I don't think that I think Facebook has such a contentious relationship with news, and news is so core to the success of Twitter. Sorry. I just don't see it happening.
We still don't have Threads over here. I don't know when we will or ever.
Where are you?
I'm in Ireland, so it's it's EU again, something you probably know, and I absolutely do not. To end probably on a lighter note, do you have a favourite tweet?
Oh,
hard question, because there's quite literally been millions of them.
So many good drill tweets.
One of the drill ones my friend quoted at me the other day was the one about the candles, about budgeting. Someone help me budget this, please. My wife is furious, or whatever. So good. So there's one from Irish Twitter, and I don't know who this person is, but the username was @Prince_Nokia, and it was in 2018. And they're talking about going to a bar on Harcourt Street, which is like the main street where not the main street, but it's a street where there are a lot of pubs and nightclubs in Dublin, in Ireland, right? So they tweeted and they said, the one time I ever went to Dicey's, I ordered a Desperados and asked for a lime slice with it. And the barman gestured to a pint glass full of lime slices. But I was so drunk that I poured my bottle into the pint glass and started sipping away. And then the barman shouted, "My limes!" It's always one that gets quoted among circles. If you're out and you see a big thing of limes, you just go, "My limes!" And then 5 people you follow will get it and you just have an immediate kinship. But yeah, that's probably my fave. What's yours?
It's funny. I just found this one that I loved. It's the one that's blocked. You're all blocked. None of you are free of sin. I just think of that a lot when I block people.
So true. Truly, none of us are free of sin. Taylor, it's been such a pleasure. Before I let you go, let's talk about the book, Extremely Online, The Untold Story of Fame, Influence and Power on the Internet. I think you've given us a pretty good insight, but what else can people expect from the book?
Yeah, the book is about sort of the first 20 years of the social internet. So it sort of starts with blog culture, MySpace stars, to Tumblr, to Vine, to Instagram, Snapchat, like the live streaming boom, Musical.ly. And it's sort of about these platforms and how they kind of battled for dominance, and then also just how the content creators themselves shaped them, how this $500 billion content creator influencer industry emerged and who actually built it. Because despite what Silicon Valley likes to say, it was not Silicon Valley. And so, yeah, I think it's it's a fun read. I tried to write it so it's like a pretty quick, fun read. It's like nostalgic. There's a lot of pop culture in there. And yeah, I really hope people pre-order it. Pre-orders are like the only thing that matters for book sales. So if you're even remotely interested in this book, please pre-order it today.
Pre-order the book. Don't be a rat. Pre-order the book, Flop Culture listeners. Taylor, what a pleasure. I'm going to let you go. I appreciate you giving me your time. Thank you so much for speaking to me on Flop Culture, and best of luck with the book.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Taylor Lorenz's book, Extremely Online, The Untold Story of Fame, Influence and Power on the Internet, is available everywhere on October 3rd. I cannot wait to read it. Please go get it. I will leave all of Taylor's other links below. But following that conversation, I kind of wanted to get a bigger sense of how Twitter's downfall has impacted users who made their careers on the platform, and especially because I'm not on the platform myself anymore. So I decided to call in the big guns, the biggest, dirtiest guns, if you will. Comedian Michael Fry, aka Big Dirty Fry, joined me to give his take on Twitter's demise. Michael Fry, you are so welcome to Flap Culture. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
You're so welcome. And I am keen to have you back for a more typical Flap Culture episode, but this one's a little bit different because we're talking about Twitter. We just spoke to the great Taylor Lorenz, a journalist who spoke about how the platform started and its imminent downfall. But I thought it'd be interesting to speak to someone who kind of made their way on Twitter. I think I found you on Twitter initially, and that's how I knew you originally. So tell us a little bit about how you found out about Twitter, your earliest memories of Twitter, why you even wanted to join. When did it come onto your radar that this might be a place you want to be on and share things?
Yeah, I think I became aware of it when I was in fifth year. I know it's been a thing since like 2006, but this would have been like 2010, I would say, by the time I cottoned onto it, or by the time I was old enough to use it, I would say, properly. And it was one of those things, like, I think George Hook was on it at the time, and it was like, he was kind of the only like Irish celebrity I think I knew on it. Not that I followed George Hook or whatever, but it was like kind of this thing where I knew he was on it, and knew Stephen Fry was on it, and then it was this other thing where it was like, oh, it's where celebrities tweet photos of their breakfast. So it was never a thing where I was like, I want to be on there, that sounds boring as fuck. And we did see like one of my friends was on it when we were in school, and we found his Twitter, and we saw that all he did was reply to comedians, and we were kind of like, man, that's sad. So we just didn't bother going on it. So it was just like very mundane or something. And then I think I kind of got into it kind of through sixth year, and then once I left school and went to college and stuff, and it was a way for me to keep in contact with people, but also like meet new people as well. Like I would have been a very shy teenager, very kind of socially anxious or whatever, and I could be funny on the internet because I wasn't inhibited by the physical symptoms of anxiety or whatever. So in a way, it was a way for me to be myself, and people seemed to like me on there, and I built all these relationships on it and just kept on it. Then I was a regular user by the age of like, say, 18, and I was on and off it for years or whatever, and then kind of blew up on it, I guess, kind of later on. But I was using it to build community and make friendships with people and all that kind of stuff. So well before I started being a comedian or trying to be funny on purpose, I was kind of just throwing my thoughts out there, and you kind of get the same things back, and you get, I was using it as a social networking site the way it should be used, the way most of these things should be used. And now suddenly I'm a content creator on it. So my relationship with it has changed, but I still love it, or I have done until very recently.
So when was that moment when you blew up? Do you remember the first time when you were like mega super viral, or that first kind of moment of like, oh, lots of people are seeing this? That's an interesting phenomenon, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I was doing a grad program, and I was living in a place called Coleraine in Derry. Not a whole lot to do in Coleraine. I was very bored in the evenings, and so because I've been playing with music or whatever, I discovered that I could have a conversation with myself using some of the software that I was using, and then I made a sketch. It was Teen Talk with Michael Teen, and it was a parody of kind of news talk. And at the time, they were doing this thing like the 8th was a discussion. And the 8th vote was a few months from that, actually. So there was this thing where, you'd have panels full of men, maybe not specifically on TikTok, but kind of in Irish media in general, where you'd talk about women's issues with panels full of men, or you talk about kind of teenagers with people who weren't teenagers and people who didn't have anything to do with teenagers. So it was this thing where it was like, okay, Teen Talk with Michael Teen, and then my guests were like Simon Harris, the CEO of Permanent TSB, and Benjamin Netanyahu, I think was it. Because I'd heard his name a lot. I heard Benjamin Netanyahu on the news a lot. So it was just like the intonation of that. But I'd done that sketch, and then suddenly people like, say, Carl Kinsella had retweeted it, and he was on Joe. And then suddenly it started going bigger into like the media sphere, because it was such an obvious parody of stuff we are very familiar with. And then I started doing more of them. So I'd done 3 in maybe close succession. And then you have people like Blind Boy retweeted it. And then there was a listicle on Joe.ie about it, and then the Irish News, and then I think Kevin Bridges at one point retweeted it very early on. So it started to just snowball. Yeah. So it started to snowball to a point where it was like wow, okay, this is doing well, and maybe I am good at this because I've done several in a row that people seem to like, and I'll keep doing it. And then, then it just kept going. And then I think lockdown was the second kind of spike in my followers and stuff, because obviously everyone's at home and I was making video content when there was nothing else being made. There was no panel shows even being made. There was no, there's no current content being made other than online. So a lot of us guys, say Killian Sunderman or Sean Burke or Darren Conway, that kind of wave of online guys, we kind of suddenly arrived and suddenly we were legitimate because we were the only comedians making anything at the time. So, but yeah, I think that's a brief history of how I've come to be.
A brief history of Michael Fry. I love it.
Yes. Yeah.
What's the maddest, or I suppose most memorable for you, opportunity you got as a result of using Twitter? Because you said you kind of, like, you're not described as an online comedian anymore. You are a comedian in your own right. But how did that transition happen, I suppose? Again, any mad opportunities as a result? Because again, we're talking about this time of Twitter, like, lawless, and as you said, made and has and continues to kind of, maybe not so much recently, made stars of people.
Yeah, I've the first big one that brought me into kind of actual mainstream media, because a lot of us online guys, we still do value the idea of being on TV and being in films and stuff like that, because it's a legitimacy or whatever. It's kind of your dream when you're a kid. But I was contacted by Kathy Burke, the comedian, who was directing an adaptation of Graham Norton's book Holding, and it was going to be on ITV, and she was like, "Do you want to be in it?" And I was like, yes. so
let me think about that, Kathy. Oh, fucking course I do.
Yeah. So she cast me in it, and the cast was insane. Like Pauline McGlynn from Father Ted was in it. There was the guy who plays Varys from Game of Thrones. There was Siobhan McSweeney from Derry Girls. There was all these kind of big stars in it. Brenda Fricker as well, and then me, which I thought was insane. And then obviously the very big one, the big one that I'm kind of most proud of, and the thing that I say to people all the time when they're like, "Where have I seen you before?" It's Derry Girls. I was asked to audition for Derry Girls by Lisa McGee on there. And I found out later there was maybe 6 others, or kind of a few other kind of Northern Irish comedians or whatever, including, say, Shane Todd, who had auditioned for the same part, and I somehow got that. But it was because Kathy and because Lisa had come across me on Twitter. And that was what was great about it, is that, like, I was in contact with journalists, so I got lots of media slots. We've done a lot of kind of panels together, I think. We've, journalists, producers. I got my work from, I do a podcast on BBC Sounds called The Michael Fry Show. I've done 2 series of that through the producer knowing me through Twitter. I've been in contact with other people who, I'm talking to TV people about it and all that kind of stuff. It was a really good way to network professionally on there, because those kinds of people were on Twitter. And I just feel like that's gone a little bit. It's not, I feel like it's not as open there anymore, because those people have maybe moved on. There aren't as many people on Twitter anymore because of the state of it at the moment.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you next. Like, when did you first notice that transition into Twitter being something else, like a totally different beast, I suppose, from the perspective of your comedy content, and then even just using it as like that place to enjoy and share with the community? When was that moment for you that you were like, oh, something has gone horribly awry here, this isn't nice anymore?
Yeah, I think the first time I was worried about it was well before Musk took over. It's when they brought in the algorithmically generated home timeline. And that was when it was like, oh, shite, it's turning into Facebook, and that was my fear. It kind of resisted that for a long time, or whatever. But there's a process that I'm sure you've seen discussed online before, a term you've seen before called enshittification, that I'm sure Taylor's probably mentioned, or I'm sure she mentions in her book, where it's a way to describe platform decay. So there's a guy called Cory Doctorow in Wired magazine, I think, came up with this thing. And it's the idea that, like, when social media networks start first, they're great for users. And then they're suddenly not so great for users, and they're more business focused. And that's where the algorithmically generated timelines come in. And then it's suddenly, they're losing money because nobody wants to be on there anymore, and they try and claw it back. And that's why we have Facebook now showing me videos of people pouring resin into things and restoring knives instead of anything my friends wanted to post, So I think once the shift into algorithmically generated stuff started happening, that's when things, I think, started to decline, but not so much, because I think lockdown was a big part of Twitter staying relevant. But once Musk took over, and particularly when he took verification and turned it into, like, he enshitified verification, for want of a better word. Like, I was verified because a staff member of Twitter had seen me and wanted me to be involved in some campaign that it didn't suit me. But then they were like, you know, is there anything we can help with? You know, we could verify it, we can give you longer videos. And I said yes to those two things, because it gave me like a sense of legitimacy or whatever.
Yeah,
People knew it was
it
definitely
makes sense
me.
at that point in your career when you're trying to actually make a name for yourself and be like, this is me. And especially also prevent against copycats. Like, and the longer video, that's common sense.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. That was then taken away from me, and you could pay $8, and the people who would normally be in show replies, which was a function to protect you from stupid bullshit from dickheads, right, are now at the very top of all the threads. So before, when you were having a discussion on Twitter, when somebody tweeted something, the next reply would be the one that got the most likes, that people engaged with the most, all that kind of stuff. So sometimes if you're looking at, say, arguments or whatever, or discussions, you would see a counterpoint that might have had some useful information in it or whatever. It didn't always happen. Like, Twitter has always been a bit of a cesspool. There's always freaks and losers on there. But if I wanted more information on a topic, I would click into replies and have a look. I don't feel compelled to do that anymore, because any popular tweet now has replies from some of the most tedious people alive, you know? And the way I saw Twitter before was kind of like a house party where you could flit in and out of conversations, and you could join conversations, and you could have a good time that way. And now it's like people you didn't want at the house party are now the loudest people in the room, and it's just a shit time for everyone, you know? And I think it plays into this idea, like, it's almost like a jealousy thing where it's like, oh, well, I'm not getting any attention here, or these people are getting attention. And it's almost like, you know, when journalists and doctors and stuff like that are verified, you have these people being like, well, my opinion should hold the same weight as those people. And that just shouldn't happen, you know. As in, like, you don't have the same expertise, you aren't as well liked, you aren't as followed. You know, why should your opinion be boosted to the top? But that's what's happening now. And like, people who were, I think there was a phrase called power users, which sounds very wanky, but like, the reason why people came on Twitter was to follow creators and celebrities and all that kind of stuff. And when you take that away, you take the reason why people come on Twitter away, and you replace it with, here's a group of fucking nerds who love Elon Musk, it's just not as fun an experience. So people are leaving to different sites like Mastodon or Blue Sky. Threads isn't really a thing in Ireland because of the GDPR kind of thing. I think it's more of a UK thing. But it hasn't taken off here because of privacy issues. But I do see a mass exodus, particularly to Blue Sky in recent months, but Mastodon at first as well. And I think it's just going to peter out. We're just going to stop using it like we did Facebook and Snapchat and other platforms who decided to set themselves on fire.
Have you found yourself migrating to other platforms for your comedy content? And what's that experience been like in comparison to the glory days of Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, because I went through my archive there. I had an Edinburgh Fringe show, so I was looking for kind of, is there anything in my previous content that I could expand on or do live or whatever? And the numbers were so different, you know, in terms of like, I was getting thousands of favourites for stuff that wasn't even that funny. And now you are struggling to get any engagement whatsoever. But yeah, I think it's always been in the back of my head that Twitter could implode one day, in the same way that Snapchat, you know, changed they changed the home screen. I can't remember what they did, but I do remember like both Kylie Jenner and Rihanna one weekend saying it was shite and then wiping like $1 billion off the share price. I had this kind of thing that like eventually they're going to change something about it. Or the company will collapse, or there's something is going to happen where it's just taken down and you need to diversify. So I am on Facebook and I'm on, not really, I don't post on Facebook. I'm on Instagram and I'm on YouTube and I'm on TikTok and I'm on, Blue Sky, Mastodon. I don't post as regularly on Blue Sky and Mastodon, but it's like, I think that's probably where we're going to migrate to. But I always have Instagram, or I always have a backup just in case. And it's a lot nicer. Instagram in particular is a lot nicer a platform than Twitter is. And now I do find myself nervous if I'm posting anything that a load of dickheads are going to show up in my mentions, which wasn't really... a worry for me before. I know it's privileged of me to say that because, I mean, my female colleagues and a lot of journalists and stuff like that have dickheads at their mentions all the time and always have done. But I feel like there's a higher concentration of dickheads on the platform now than there ever has been.
Two-part question. Because initially I was just going to ask you your favourite tweet, which I would still like to know. But I'd also like to know your favourite kind of piece of content, or just maybe something you have nice memories around that you yourself posted on Twitter.
Yeah, it's like anything that happened over lockdown, I think. Any of those ones I posted got really good kind of feedback. I think the one I really like at the moment, and I posted it on New Year's Eve, was the SpongeBob old man story. Because it's done the rounds on Tumblr, and it's I had this person who messaged me saying that, you know, their wife was in a hospice and they'd found that video and they found my videos and they really enjoyed it. And it was kind of like I had a really nice, they were like, we have really nice memories of watching you before she passed. And I was like, oh my God, you know.
But those are the things that, like, I think people can be really flippant about social networks and social media, like online content and stuff. And it's like, how can you be, when you hear a story like that from someone where there was a genuine connection that they had to a load of pixels you put on a screen? Like, that's incredible. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's so nice, you know. And I got some really, really lovely responses to that video in particular. And, you know, a lot of kind of, obviously, like, it's a piece of queer content. So a lot of kind of LGBT people kind of replied to me, and there's this person who said, oh, I actually had a tattoo of I am yours and you are mine, and which is a quote from the, you know, they didn't tattoo it from the video, but it was just like, it so happened to be something they had tattooed on themselves, them and their partner or whatever. So I got some really lovely responses to that, and it was kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm capable of some really nice things here, and people do appreciate it. And it was kind of like, you know, particularly at a time when all your engagement's going down, it was like, okay, wow, you can still pull out something really good every so often. But my favourite tweets, and I have a list of them here because it's so hard to pick a favourite one because it changes all the time.
An impossible question. Hit me with the list.
Yeah. Oh my God. Right. Okay. So one of yours I really liked was the time of was it longitude, and there's some guy doing press ups and you videoed him and you're like, get a life. And I think about that all the time.
We regularly use that as a soundbite on this podcast, and Adam's probably going to put it in here right now.
Get a life! Get a life!
That was a banger. Yeah. I had some bangers back in my day, not to sound 800 years old.
Did.
Not to sound like old man yells at clouds, but yeah, that was a good time for me.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a few of them I quote all the time. One is from a guy called the Furlinator, and it is, event happens, but how does this affect me, the protagonist of reality? Because I think that's just so, it's exactly what online culture is like. You know, when you see that thing recently where people are posting recipes, like was it the 3-bean soup? There was
how do I make this without beans?
Yeah.
People are insane.
It's not for you. Shut the fuck up. Like, you know? It's just like, so I really love that one. I always quote that one. And then there was another one. It was like, I never thought leopards would eat my face, sobs woman who voted for the leopard eating people's faces party, which is just so, it's very funny. I remember it being used when Caitlyn Jenner was talking about the Republican Party and the kind of anti-trans bills and stuff like that. And it's like, but you're a fucking Republican. Why did you vote for them? Do you know, that kind of thing? And then in an Irish context, there's a couple of threads I really loved. Which one is obviously Seamus O'Reilly beating Mary McAleese on Ket. I think that is an incredible piece of writing, and like something I'm always like, okay, I think it definitely propelled him to his Observer column and all these other things that he does in his book and all that kind of stuff. It really kind of launched him. The other one is a guy called Richie Craven, who has a thread about working in Marks and Spencer's when he was 16.
Yes. And, oh my God, I forgot that one. That's so good.
It's my favourite Christmas story ever because he was like a nervous young fella. He told his family there's a massive discount and they weren't sure if it was going to happen, but they let him do it. And he just fucking fed everyone for Christmas. And it was just, it's so nice to see like a young fella get a win. You know, it's so well written. It's really lovely. And then me and my friends would have killed E.T. with hammers, I can tell you that much. It's off the platform now, but I think about it all the time. And then, one I think about a lot, and I laugh every time I see it. I laugh for maybe a full day when I saw it first. There's this guy who talks about a dream he had, and I can't remember what the context of the dream was, but in it there was a food called the King's Hand, and it was basically a mold of a hand made of M&M's cookie dough, but it was filled with Greek salad. And so he makes this hand. He makes the king's hand and eats it. It's a whole thread about this. But then in the replies, there's all these people replying with products they've dreamt of and memes they've dreamt of. And it's the most unhinged shit because it's obviously like dreams don't make any sense anyway. But I cried laughing when I saw it first. And there's so many good replies to it. I think that's one of my favourite things on Twitter in general. And then small Irish account, Stephen Loughlin, who I think is very, very funny. And he has ruined
Stephen,
this word.
Friend of the pod. Friend of me. I don't know if he listens to the podcast, but he's my friend.
I love him so much. But he has ruined the word ramen for me forever. And I don't know if you remember this tweet, but the tweet was basically just like, yeah, I like ramen your mother. And every time I see ramen or someone suggests ramen, I laugh and I have to say it to them. And he's ruined it I cannot read that word ever because it's, I don't know, but those are the things I'm going to remember till my dying day. Do you know that kind of thing? Like we've seen that meme about like people in nursing homes or whatever doing, saying shit in memes or saying vines out loud or whatever. I think because it's and it sounds really sad, but Twitter has been a huge part of my life and I'm not sure what it would be like if it didn't exist, you know? So it's kind of like I look back on all of it really fondly and I'm kind of like, I'm really sorry to see that it's going. I guess it's kind of like the way things are or whatever. There was always going to be a kind of logical end to a social network the same way as Bebo did in the past or MySpace or whatever. It's just taken a bit longer this time. But, you know, I do remember it really fondly or will in future. So, I'm sad to see that it's on flop culture, that it's now currently mid-flop, you know?
What a shame. Well, the minute he started bandying around that X, I was like, right, get it on the list. This is
I refuse
behavior.
to refer to X. Do you know, I just won't. I haven't done it at any point during this interview and I never will in future. I think it's the stupidest thing in the world. Oh, fuck him. I hate him so much.
Shameful. Michael, what a pleasure. I will say again, I need you back next season. So think of the flop. You have so much time. Time. You're more than welcome. Doors always open. Where can people find you beyond Twitter if they want to hear some jokes? I don't know if you're doing any shows, but if you're not, you're on the other platforms. Big yourself up, shout yourself out. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I don't have any live shows at the moment, but I am on other social media under @BigDirtyFry on all platforms. The Michael Fry Show is available to stream on BBC Sounds. You can get that in the Republic of Ireland. You just have to download the app, but it's good stuff. And yeah, you're gonna see more of me in future. I'm working on some stuff with Sean Burke and Eleanor Morton. We're doing a work in progress in Edinburgh at the end of October. And then apart from that, there'll be stuff in the pipeline that I'll announce later that I don't quite have now. But yeah, Big Dirty Fry on all platforms.
So exciting. What a tease. I love it. Michael, thank you so much for joining me on Flop Culture. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me on.
Big thanks again to Michael. I can't wait to have him back. And similarly, I will leave all of his links below. Finally, top of the flops this week.
You're a flop.
Top of the flops this week is presenter Lorenz Fox, GB News presenter Lorenz Fox. He went on a misogynistic on-air rant about a political journalist named Ava Evans, in which he basically talked about how no one would want to have sex with her. He called her a little woman. He went on to say, this is the full sentence, trigger warning, show me a single self-respecting man that would like to climb into bed with that woman ever, who wasn't an incel. We need powerful, strong, amazing women who make great points for themselves. We don't need these sort of feminist 4.0. That sentence doesn't make sense, but whatever. They're pathetic and embarrassing. Who'd want to shag that? Sorry, it's true though. GB News has suspended him and they've said they're launching an internal investigation. I'd like to see how long that would last. And you know what? In times like this, girls, I think there'd be an argument about, you know, when they go low, we go high. No, girls, I'm going to go low. The neck of this man, a man who looks like an inside-out duvet cover, right? Talking about how anyone looks and about whether anyone would want to have sex with another person. When this man is still riding off the high of being previously married to fucking Billy Piper. Shut up. And like the gall of anyone to, you know, he's described as an actor. What was the last thing he was in that had any impact or significance? Man has made a career off being a mouthpiece, and that's how he should be described. Mouthpiece. Victorian ghost child, anemic mouthpiece, Lawrence Fox. Get a life.
Get a life!
And with that, I will bid you adieu. Flop Culture returns next week, and for the month of October, we're going spooky with our flops. And for the first one, we're not just going spooky, girls, we're going waxy. My name is Fionnuala Jones. This has been Flop Culture. Editing was done by the gorgeous Adam Shanahan. Until next week, goodbye. Please stay safe.